When I was going through my Steam replay and compiling a list of the games I played last year for this video, I literally said out loud, wow, I did a lot more last year than I realized. Not all of those games will make this list. Some I didn't play long enough to form a solid opinion on. Some I had already played, and my experience with it in 2025 didn't really add anything new to my enjoyment of it. And while not all of these are first playthroughs, and not all of these games came out in 2025, all of them had an impact on me in the last year. For me, gaming mostly boils down to two things. The games I play on stream for my Twitch channel, and the games I play offline for myself. And then there's the handful of games that have recently been affectionately dubbed Friendslops by the wider gaming community, which somehow manages to defy both other categories for me despite their broadness. But before we get into any of those, the honorable mentions for the year. These are some of the games I've enjoyed this year, but haven't played enough to talk more about. UFO 50 is a really cool and unique compilation of 50 arcade-style games. It has a little bit of everything, and it does a really good job of selling its backstory as a sort of alternate universe Capcom collection. Date Everything is the definitive dating sim that one day I will go back and play more of. There is so much more to this game than meets the eye, and it's a real love letter to the voice actors that fill it with so much character. Pokémon Legends ZA brings an active battle style that has been something I've wanted from a Pokémon game for so long. I still have to play more of it, but I've enjoyed my time in it so far. Tombwater technically hasn't been released, but I did get to enjoy a playtest of the first 4-ish hours of the game. It's a 2D Souls-like that feels like a mix of Red Dead Redemption and Bloodborne, and it was a fun playtest. There's a demo out if you want to try it. I highly recommend giving it a look, and I can't wait for the full game to come out later this year. Getting over it with Bennett Foddy might be overstating the enjoy part of this honorable mention list, as I really only play it under duress, but it needs to be brought up for this one moment alone. Save the game! There's not a save button, so all I can do is hit quit and go back in. What the fuck just happened? What the fuck just happened? Oh my god! And that's all we'll say about that. Before we get into the rest of the video, just a fair warning, while I won't be spoiling any big moments or final bosses or anything like that, there could be some footage of early to mid-game content for all of the games mentioned. Nothing should spoil the experience for any of the games you might be looking forward to playing, but just keep it in mind. Check the description for all of the games I will be going over. And now, without further ado, let's look back at the vibrant array of games I played in 2025. Streaming a game live for an audience, no matter how big or small, whether a first playthrough or a replay, is such a unique way to experience it. I love streaming. I love getting to learn a game with other people, some who already know it like the back of their hands, and some who are seeing it for the first time along with me. I'm building memories not only for myself with the games I pick to play, but also with the people who choose to watch them with me. These are the games I played on stream this year. Spiritfarer is a game about death, loss, grief, love, and life, all wrapped up in one cozy little package. You play as Stella, the new Spiritfarer captaining an ever-expanding ship in a realm somewhere between life and death. You're tasked with helping various spirits come to terms with all the joys, tragedies, and heartbreaks they experienced in their lives, so that they can pass on to the next stage of their existence. I went into Spiritfarer knowing it would make me sad, and while it surely did, it also filled me with a deep sense of contentment and belonging. The subtle rhythm of the cozy task management part of the game, the farming, fishing, gathering, cooking, ship upgrading, balanced well against the sometimes heartwarming, sometimes gut-wrenching relationship-building aspect of it. The wide cast of characters from all manner of personality and backgrounds made every trip to the Everdoor bittersweet, even for the characters whom I didn't like as much as the others. Spiritfarer is charming and emotionally provoking, and there really isn't any other game I've played that's been quite like it. What can I say about Breath of the Wild that hasn't already been said in the 8 years since its release? Technically, this playthrough was my second one, a replay after getting through about 80% of the game back in 2017 when I never fully beat it. The Legend of Zelda is a franchise that has been around for longer than I've been alive. I didn't grow up with an N64 or GameCube, so most of my exposure to it prior to the Switch was on my Game Boy Color, with Link's Awakening and Oracle of Ages and Seasons. Breath of the Wild is a beautiful game that has had such an impact on the gaming landscape as a whole. From the wide array of environments to the points of interest visible far in the distance, you can see its influences in so many modern open-world games. It's hard to imagine any future game Nintendo could make being more of a magnum opus than its Switch launch title. I'm so glad I came back to this game to experience it. Maybe not to the fullest, because how in the world are you supposed to find all those Koroks? But to a state of completion I felt satisfied with. Also, just as a final note, Lynels are absolutely terrifying. If you've ever wanted to play a game that scratches the same itch as Game of Thrones does to read or watch, then the Dragon Age series is one you don't want to let pass you by. Dragon Age Origins is the first installment of a now 4-game series, and the second game I ever played in the series behind my first foray with Dragon Age Inquisition. Despite having played all 4 games in partial capacity, I have never actually beaten any of them, and picking Origins as the one to restart first seemed the obvious choice. Even though I never finished it, I loved Inquisition when I played it. My cat is, after all, named Dorian Pawvis, most recently of Meow and Rathis. I loved it enough that I bought the other 2 games, even though at the time I couldn't even play them on the MacBook I owned. The lore of the Dragon Age series has gripped me for over a decade. I find its world-building fascinating, its characters rich, and its setting gripping. Dragon Age Origins really does a great job of immersing you into the world of Thedas. The cultures feel real and complex. The story being told through the dichotomy of political upheavals and cataclysmic disasters keeps me engaged, with every problem only seeming to compound on the rest. I'm still going through my replay, but I've persevered through tough battles with ancient dragons, and survived Alistair hating me for some unfathomable reason this go around, and I intend to see it through to the end. In 2024, I played Celeste for the first time, and my friend recommended to me during my time with it another indie platformer he had stumbled across called Splodey. I finally got around to it this year, and what can I say about it? Well, a lot, actually. The game looks simple, a 2D side-scrolling platformer that has its selling point as there isn't a jump button. Which is true, and it isn't, because instead of jumping, you propel yourself with exploding potions. The game can be approached a few different ways, with speedrunning times to beat hard-baked into the gameplay, collectible souls to figure out how to obtain, and some seriously difficult levels thrown into a deceptively simple concept. You have to have some basic understanding of velocity and trajectory to get the best times, and sometimes just to cross seemingly impassable gaps to the end of the level. I hope more people play and appreciate this game for what it is. I, personally, still have to beat the final level of World 5, but that's a 2026 goal now. In recent years, Hollow Knight has become one of my favorite games. I 112%ed it back in 2023, doing most everything I could in one playthrough except for the still elusive Pantheon 5. I love listening to the soundtrack, and still get emotional whenever I hear Sealed Vessel in any capacity. So like most, when Silksong was finally announced, I couldn't wait for September to come. I added a whole extra stream day just so I could start it as soon as possible. There is something special about playing a game that you love only once a week. In my experience, it gives it time to grow and resonate between each session. Exploring becomes a real endeavor as you try to remember what you were doing the last time you delved into Farloom. The mysteries of the Citadel pull you towards the next stream with an enticing snare of silk. As of writing this, I am at the tail end of Act 2, preparing to fight the penultimate boss of the act before going back in to finish up some odds and ends so I can start Act 3. I'm holding out my final judgment until it's fully beaten, but there's a good chance that, for me, Silksong will meet or even surpass its predecessor by the time I'm done. For many years, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice was the From Software title that intimidated me the most. Even as I got more comfortable and familiar with the Soulsborne games and the genre as a whole, Sekiro still loomed over me as a skill ceiling I believed I would never be able to reach. But a funny thing happens when you play more games and try new things. You get more experience and more confidence. Bosses that seemed impossible going in suddenly click and start to make sense. There is something to be said for games that make you master their mechanics. There is no brute forcing your way through enemies. No overpowered builds that make mincemeat of bosses. You have to learn the game's dance, and the choreography starts to become like second nature. Part of me regrets not playing Sekiro earlier in my gaming life. A bigger part of me thinks I'm playing it exactly when I'm meant to. I learned how to read boss patterns from games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring, how to parry from Lies of P and Nine Souls. It doesn't mean that Sekiro isn't a test of skill for me now, but it does mean I'm prepared for the challenges it faces me with. Sometimes a game comes along that grabs you and simply refuses to let you go. I've had a few of these over the years. The Last of Us enticed me enough with its story that I saved up for a PS4 specifically to play it. I dumped 50 hours into Stardew Valley in the first 2 weeks I owned it. No Man's Sky came out in 2016, and I absolutely lost myself in it. Yes, I still loved it, even in its highly contentious beginning stages. I did technically play Elden Ring back when it came out in 2022, but I had only gotten through Godric and into Liurnia before putting it down. It wasn't until mid-2024 that I picked it back up again, and it wasn't until 2025 that I beat it for the first time. And then, I did it again. And again. Elden Ring is special to me for a multitude of reasons. But the one that stands out the most is that 2 of my 3 playthroughs over the last year I completed with my friends while using the Seamless Co-op mod. I usually like to play my single-player games as a single-player game, but going through this game with friends made me love it even more than I already did. There's a certain level of chaos in trying to coordinate a team around a tough boss and figuring out how our builds work together. And that's even before throwing an enemy and item randomizer aspect into the mix. All of the great runes we needed to actually reach the final boss were found behind another boss or an NPC quest, except for the one that decided to roleplay as an out-of-the-way shadow fragment. We were all crashing out over that one. Elden Ring has quickly become the game I have the most hours in, and I can't see anything else topping it anytime soon, especially as my friends and I plan a 3rd playthrough together for the new year. Between the games I played on stream and the games I played offline, a special category of game arose. Yes, the one that in the past year received the genre nickname of Friendslop. You know the type. The Lethal Company, content warning style games that involve cooperating with, and occasionally playfully sabotaging, your friends as you work together towards a common goal. For this particular style of game, the closest we got to Friendslop was the hidden role genre, where 1 or 2 people in a group of friends worked against the greater whole. It was the go-to for friend groups for casual or quick play. It's interesting to me how this has shifted to full-on cooperative gameplay over the past couple of years. The 2 Friendslops that I played the most this year were R.E.P.O and Peak. I even competed in a casual Peak tournament with one of my stream teams. R.E.P.O has you moving through an assortment of haunted buildings to find and collect artifacts to bring back to your home base, where you can buy upgrades and other fun items. Monsters haunt the halls, and you have to avoid them or fight them in order to find all the extraction points before returning to start the next level. Peak is a game about climbing. You have to work together with your friends to survive a variety of hazardous biomes and reach the summit. You can earn various badges to decorate your scout sash with and to earn cosmetic rewards. And whatever you do, don't forget to bring along Bing Bong. While the looping cycle of the games can be very samey when you play them, It's the random factor of your friends and their shenanigans that really make these games shine and continue to be fresh and fun. Humans are unpredictable, and our ability to adapt and improvise make games that rely on that ability, or lack thereof in some cases, a blast to play. The Friendslops genre is one that I imagine will only continue to expand in scope over the next few years. I'm curious how it will grow and look forward to whatever will follow in its wake. There's a certain balance to being a gamer when you're also a streamer, at least for me. In the modern gaming landscape, games are released so frequently and at such regularly high quality that it's almost impossible to keep up with all that come out. A mindset I've had to frequently fight against over the past 4 years is the idea that if I'm going to play a game, I have to stream it. But this just isn't feasible, and honestly is a fairly unhealthy way to approach gaming. That's why I like to pick games throughout the year to just play for myself, for my own enjoyment. And boy, did I pick some real masterpieces to experience this year. Balatro was a sleeper hit for me this year. I've never played poker, but thankfully for me, you don't actually need to understand how poker works to have an absolute blast with this game. At first glance, it doesn't seem like Balatro would really work. How do you have a poker roguelike experience? Of course, the answer is simple. You have a deck of cards, you have a score to beat, you have hands to play, and then you have countless modifiers. The concept is surprisingly straightforward while also being technically complex. Between the different unlockable decks, the planet and tarot packs leveling up your hands and cards, and the notoriously game-changing Joker cards, the possibilities for different deck builds and strategies are practically infinite. It's an addicting cycle of start game, customize deck, upgrade hands, watch number get big, make brain go brrrr. Balatro is addicting and fun. It's a great casual game for me to play when I don't have a lot of time to invest in a longer story game, or on my phone while on a lunch break at work. I just have to remember to stop playing when my time is up. Just one more run. Just one more run. Unless you're only in the AAA space for game news, you couldn't have missed the one game this year that was, in my opinion, the definitive, unmissable masterpiece of the year. In April, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 came out of nowhere and absolutely surpassed any expectations I had formed within the first hour of playing it. I was so enamored by this game that I even struggled through the first 5 hours or so of it while using remote play on my grandfather's incredibly slow internet. I definitely don't recommend doing this for games that require practically frame-perfect inputs, by the way, in case there was any question about it. There is not a thing about Clair Obscur that I didn't fall in love with. The 8-hour album snagged first place on my Spotify Wrapped. The combat was some of the most fun I've ever had in a turn-based RPG, feeling to me like a refreshed version of the Legend of Dragoon system. The world building and setting design were unlike anything I had seen, vividly distinct from everything else I played this year. But what impressed me the most throughout my entire experience was the narrative and the characters. Playing through Clair Obscur, I was constantly on the verge of both tears and laughter. The effervescent fantasy setting offset the deeply complex emotional storytelling, making me rethink how I interpret grief, love, and family with pitch-perfect story beats. And yeah, I loved the janky, only-up platforming areas too. After beating Clair Obscur, I was itching for another game with a compelling story. South of Midnight tells a very different kind of fantasy, rich in its inspiration from the folklore and culture of the American South. Hazel is our heroine, thrown into an adventure that spans generations of her family's and her town's history. Funnily enough, she was the first of the 2 weavers I got to play this year, though in Hazel's case, it's weaving together stories to make sense of how the past and present are bleeding together. The boss fights in this game all center around healing the hurts from the cycles of abuse and disparity that capitalism and wealth continue to reinforce in the Appalachian and Bayou communities the game's vibrant backdrop borrows from. It's both heartbreaking and compelling to realize the horrors and monsters we face against sometimes are not always that way by choice, and that sometimes it is through their choices alone that they wither and lose themselves to grotesquerie and evil. While South of Midnight did not have the most challenging combat or gameplay of all the games I played this year, It had the most unique storytelling, a captivating soundtrack filled with old blues and bluegrass and jazz that brought its unique setting to life, and an art style that pulled the whole thing together. It's a relatively short game, only taking 15 to 20 hours to beat, but it's packed full of life and heart, and well worth a playthrough to experience its charm. It shouldn't really come as a surprise that when Elden Ring Nightreign came out, I was out there playing it with the rest of the Souls fanbase. And while I did stream it sometimes, for the most part I've played the game on my own with friends. Nightreign is an interesting experiment of a game, taking the existing Elden Ring formula and applying a roguelike element to it. It works fairly well, with a wide array of pre-made characters you can choose from, while still having a lot of ways you can customize your experience. Where Elden Ring is a game you can take your time in to explore and master, Nightreign is one that has you on a strict time limit. Decisions have to be made fast, risks have to be evaluated, and random events and invasions have to be dealt with. While you always know what boss you're going to face, except for in higher Deep of Night levels, you never know what kind of camps, weapons, or events might appear in the 2 days that lead to the final fight. All in all, Nightreign has been a fun experience, with updates regularly gifting us with new enhanced bosses, game modes, and even a release of a full-blown DLC in the 7 months since it launched. And while it is possible to play this game solo, the friends I have played it with are what make the game one that I will continue to pick up. Over the summer, before we had any inkling of Silksong's impending release, I had the itch to play something like Hollow Knight. I decided to pick up Nine Souls, a Metroidvania with a focus on parry combat. Re-envisioning old stories with a different lens has always been a trope I've enjoyed in the media I consume. The Taopunk setting for retelling Chinese myths and Taoist parables is a surprisingly perfect combination. Cutscenes throughout the game are laid out like comic panels, giving the big moments a weight of contrast against the more colorful, minute-to-minute gameplay. And speaking of gameplay, boy is it good. The exploration is fun, but the combat and boss fights is really where Nine Souls shines. Parrying is essential for survival, and learning the enemy patterns is like learning the choreography of an impressively complex dance. The final boss was one of the most challenging boss fights I've faced in the past decade, especially when going for the true ending of the game. It's funny that, like Sekiro and Expedition 33, Nine Souls was a game that relied heavily on parrying, because the final game I have to go over for the year is, well... I played Lies of P for the first time when it was released in 2023. I just talked about how I'm a sucker for the retelling of old stories, and the steampunk fantasy version of The Adventures of Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi is no exception. I struggled through my first playthrough of this game. At the time, it was by far the hardest game I had ever set to playing, and while I was much better at it this time around, it still ranks up there in terms of challenge. Replaying Lies of P this year was a twofold process. Progressing through the main game from a new save, and then eventually delving into its brand new DLC. Even re-experiencing it, Lies of P still feels like a breath of fresh air. I love this game, from the level design to the bosses, to the story, to the characters. I love getting to wear a big old dog head, or getting to look like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, for a bit of levity in a game that is often dark. I love trying to read the puppet speech from the boss puppets as I die to them over and over again. The feedback of the red sparks and the satisfying clang of a perfect parry feels so good, especially when you get those fast attacks that don't want to let up. I just reached the DLC right before the new year rolled over. I'm 2 bosses in, with quite a few more to go, but I can feel the same curiosity that I did with the original story the first time I played. I can't wait to continue to uncover its mysteries to see how it affects my understanding of the main game's lore and plot. 2025 may be over now, but the memories I have of traversing some of the most vivid and varied stories I have ever experienced stick with me. This past year was one of the best overall gaming years I've had in recent memory, and there are still so many games that have been released that I haven't had the chance to play. As we now head into 2026, I'm hopeful that I'll have at least a few experiences with the games I'll choose to play this year that will strike a chord with me in the same way the ones last year did. It has been an incredible journey, and I can only look forward to what the future of gaming will bring. Still hanging out? Thank you so much for watching my video. This was my first time trying to get into serious video editing. Everything else on my main channel is either directly from a Twitch VOD or a minimally edited short or compilation. I learned a lot making this, and I think I've gotten a taste for it now. Here's to 2026, the year for learning new skills. Happy New Year to you all. See you for the next one.